Hi there. As we get into discussing engineering, one of the biggest things we've got to talk about is the difference between some very related fields, that of engineers, scientists, mathematicians, and technologists. Now, all these people work together, they all do similar work, and their work is all interrelated. But they do it differently, they're looking for different things, and they go about it in much different fashions. And that's what we want to talk about today, is some of the differences so that you understand what the differences are between these different fields, and so that you can make better decisions in the future. Now, as we get moving into this, we first need to understand what engineers do, and we need to understand the difference made in the roles of engineers and that of scientists. Now, the main difference between the engineer and the scientist is in the object of each one's work. A scientist searches for answers to technological questions to obtain knowledge of why something occurs. The engineer, on the other hand, searches for answers to technological questions, but always with the application in mind. The scientist is wanting to know why. The engineer wants to know, what can I do with that? And that's at the heart of the difference between scientists and engineers. And Theodore von Karman, one of the pioneers of America's aerospace industry, had said, "Scientists explore what is, engineers create what has not been." And that sums it up very well. We're going to start out looking at a few definitions. And first off, we're going to look at engineering. That's the application of science and mathematics by which the properties of matter and the sources of energy in nature are made useful to people. Now, this comes out of the dictionary, out of Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and it basically sums it up. It's the application of science and mathematics and making things useful to people. Science, on the other hand, is knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through the scientific method. Very specific. And then mathematics. That's the science of numbers and their operations. And it's using numbers and their operations to model things, to explain it numerically and what's going on. And that's one of the biggest differences. We use the math to help explain it. It's a separate language into itself that explains things that we can't put on paper otherwise. Now, so in general, science is about discovering things or acquiring new knowledge. Scientists are always asking why. That's the big question, why. Engineers, on the other hand, they ask why, but that's because there's a problem that's preventing a service or a product from being produced. The engineer is always thinking about the application when they ask why. The scientist will strip away all the other parts and get down to just that one single piece. The engineer puts it into perspective of being used in the world with all the other things happening to it. I want to use a couple of examples to help illustrate these differences. First off, scientists will study the planets in our solar system so that they can better understand them. Engineers study the planets also, but they want to build a spacecraft that will operate in that environment or even take us to that planet. Scientists will study the atomic structure to understand the nature of matter. Engineers study atomic structure, but they want to build smaller and faster microprocessors. Scientists will study the movement of the Earth's tectonic plates to understand and predict earthquakes. Engineers study movement of tectonic plates to design safer buildings. Those are the fundamental differences and kind of show those differences between scientists and engineers. I want to bring up another term, another profession that's closely related to engineering, and that's engineering technology. Engineering technology and engineering have similarities, yet there are big differences in that they have very, very different career opportunities. ABET is a certification organization. They are the engineering accreditation body, and they define engineering technology as that part of the technological field which requires the application of scientific and engineering knowledge and methods combined with technical skills in support of engineering activities. Engineering technology lies in the occupational range between the craftsman and engineering at the end of the range closest to the engineer. So they're in between a craftsman who does work and works with their hands, and they're going to build unique pieces, usually one at a time, very, very slowly. It takes time. And that of the engineer that's using technology and they're designing things. The technologist is in there between. They're close to an engineer, but they're not exactly the same thing as an engineer. Now, don't get me wrong. They're not below an engineer. They're different. They do a different role in the whole technology process, and they have a very important role, and it's very important that they do their role, and very important that you understand the differences in those roles. So what I want to do is look at the differences, some more examples, and look at the differences between a technologist and an engineer. Now, a technologist identifies computer networking equipment necessary for a business to meet its needs and oversees the installation of that equipment. They're going to put it all into place. The engineer is the one who designed the computer boards to transmit the data. A technologist will develop a procedure to manufacture a shaft for an aircraft engine using a newly developed welding technique. The engineer was the one who developed the new welding machine. A technologist is going to identify the proper building materials and oversee the construction of a new building, while the engineer takes the proper support structures, determines those proper support structures, taking into account the local soil, proposed usage, earthquake risks, and other design requirements. And those are some of the big differences, kind of highlight the differences between a technologist and an engineer. They both do different roles, but they're both involved in the same project.